But there is one thing that I find is very interesting. We haven't talked too much about, like, for example, like the like the titles of the track in Tack, but that kind of is the only real, like, quote unquote, like, thematic or narrative point that you can take from it, because all of the titles are they really heavily feel like details or parts of memories. So there's a song, that translates to hopping into puddles, right? Which is, if that's not a childhood memory, that's the most I'm a kid and I just got my first pair of water shoes, like, and I'm hopping into puddles, and
Absolutely.
so that's kind of the thing that I find interesting, is that, like, a lot of the titles, they really echo, like Lost at Sea. I see a train with a nosebleed. Like, some of it is almost random. Like, you're kind of like, okay, like Lost at Sea feels like feels like a children's book, but with a nosebleed feels like, not a good memory. That feels more like, like you just had a nosebleed in gym class and you hid in the bathroom for 30 minutes. But still, I'm giving a lot of comparisons, but that's because Sigur Rós evokes a lot of this stuff, like, this is how I feel when I listen to this music. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. If
you
I
were gonna
if I
say something
may,
there?
yeah, just like a quick
Yeah.
parenthesis here, because we're talking about track names, and I feel like this is the only place where I can mention this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I found myself completely gobsmacked when I'm doing my listen of the full Tack album today.
Yeah.
Because when I went to Iceland and I then decided to continue my vacation elsewhere, I went to track 7.
Oh,
And track 7
nice.
is called Milan, and Milan is where I went.
That's so cool.
And do you know what's crazy?
Yeah.
Do you know how long I took to do the ring road, like not ring road, the whole of Iceland? Like, the first day I got the van to the last day I dropped off the van, how many days it was?
I don't.
7.
Okay.
There's something weird going on. Like,
they're connected. I'm telling you.
I don't want to be a superstitious person, but
No, but if a
yeah.
band's gonna tap into the ether and connect to your brain, it's gonna be this one. At least it feels.
Yeah.
Like it. But it's also that's amazing. That's really cool. And but I do want to mention that the interesting thing about the titles, and this is where I'd like to speak a little bit on. So the interesting thing about the titles is this album. It has these very strong. It has strong imagery in the titles. And Sigur Rós, all of their music, it's usually they build it with the idea of creating a lot of imagery and a lot of narrative through emotions, not through just like the poetry of the lyrics and the songwriting. Everything comes through in the music. They try to build as much space with the music and the arrangements and the sound of it all, and they try to give you as much through that. And what I find interesting is that the previous album, which is the bracket album, they call it. It has 2 titles. I call it the bracket album and that's what most English speakers call it. And the title is actually just 2 brackets. But anyways, so that album actually is all sung in a made-up language, right? Which they also use on Tack. And the made-up language is a gibberish language, so it has no actual meaning. There's no words are real when you listen to the bracket album. Every single song is in that language. And that means that the titles, the songs on that album also have no real titles. It's Untitled 1, Untitled 2, Untitled 3. They do have unofficial titles that people found out, which are what the band calls the songs, but those are not official. And some of the titles, one of them is like Ebo, because they use an Ebo on one of the songs. But anyways, so the interesting thing is that album, that shows exactly that all of the music, all of the imagery, all of the narrative, all of the themes of the piece, they're all made through the music.